I was a seasonal park ranger working in a remote national park. I thought I knew what to expect. I was 32, and I was there to protect the trails and help visitors. But things took a turn I never saw coming. A few weeks ago, I started to feel uneasy. The nights were getting darker, and the isolation wrapped around me like a heavy cloth. While patrolling the main trails, I noticed how quiet it was. I could hear my footsteps crunching on the gravel. The air felt thick. I started to feel like someone was watching me, but I dismissed it as paranoia. I'd never felt like that before. One evening I heard something that sent a chill through me, a child's laughter carried by the wind, echoing through the trees. I felt a pang of worry. Children shouldn't be out here alone. I had to check it out. I followed the sound deeper into the woods, maybe too far from the main path. Eventually, I stumbled upon an abandoned campsite. Tents were torn, and the place felt eerie. That's when I saw a weathered journal lying on the ground. As I opened it, the last entry caught my eye. It was a desperate message that ended mid-sentence. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Days passed, but my unease only grew. At first it was small things. My flashlight disappeared. I was sure I left it in the cabin. Then I saw strange footprints in the dirt. They led right to my door. I couldn't remember any animals that could leave prints like that. My heart raced every time I stepped outside after dark. One night I sat on the porch trying to shake off the unease. The silence was suffocating. I felt cold, like the temperature had dropped suddenly. Then I heard whispers. They were faint, but they were there, just beyond the trees. I strained to hear, but the words escaped me. I kept looking around, but nothing moved. I thought maybe it was the wind. Days turned into weeks, and the strange occurrences didn't stop. Other rangers mentioned haunted stories, noises and oddities. I brushed them off, but it was hard to ignore what I'd been experiencing. One evening, I decided to open that journal again. I was hoping it might explain everything, but as I flipped through the pages, I froze. One line caught my eye. It mentioned feeling a presence in the woods, something watching them. My heart sank. I stood up, feeling dizzy. That's when I noticed a figure just outside the tree line. A man stood there staring. I opened my mouth, about to call out, but then it hit me. The forest was silent, no animal, no wind. I blinked, and he was gone. I don't know what I saw that night, but the unease flooded back. I felt sick. Were the stories real? I turned around, and nobody was there, just the dark woods, watching. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. The memory of that man lurking outside the trees haunted me. I shook it off and decided to do a thorough check of the trails. Maybe keeping busy would help ease my mind. As I walked, I scanned the ground for tracks. I needed to feel grounded, like I was in control. But my focus kept shifting. Every sound made me jump. A squirrel rustling, a branch cracking. It all felt amplified, as if nature was mocking my fear. About halfway through my patrol, I came across a strange sight. An old wooden sign, partially buried in the leaves, caught my eye. I brushed off the dirt, and the words emerged, "Do not enter." Below it, in faded letters, I could barely make out a date. It was marked over a decade ago. Confused, I looked around. There was no path here. It felt like the forest was hiding something. I was tempted to leave, but curiosity pushed me to investigate further. I walked a few steps deeper and spotted more remnants of a trail leading into the shadow of the trees. My instincts screamed at me to turn back. Something wasn't right. I felt a pull, like tendrils of the forest were wrapping around me, urging me to venture forward. But I hesitated. With every second, the stillness pressed harder against my ears. Just then, I heard a loud snapping sound, like a stick breaking. I spun around, heart pounding, but nothing was there. The woods exhaled a heavy silence that felt suffocating. My breath quickened, and panic set in. I had to get out. I bolted back toward the main trail, adrenaline fueling my feet. As I neared the clearing, I glanced back. For a brief moment I caught a glimpse of a figure again, lingering where I had just been. It stood still, shrouded in darkness. My pulse raced. Was it the same man? I reached the cabin and slammed the door behind me, locking it tight. I leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. My mind raced through the stories I had been told, haunted campers, missing hikers. The hairs on my neck stood up. Then I heard it. A soft knock at my door. It was such a simple sound, but it sent ice through my veins. I didn't want to believe it, but I had to check. I peered through the window. Nothing but trees swaying with a whispering wind. I almost breathed a sigh of relief when I caught a glimmer of something on the ground, a small, tattered piece of fabric. It was a faded backpack strap. I remembered the journal mentioning a camping group that had gone missing years ago. I felt sick. Had I stumbled upon their secrets? The weight of it all crashed down on me. I needed answers, but whatever was out there, it wasn't finished with me. I turned back inside, heart racing again, as the knocking came once more. This time it was louder and more insistent. I couldn't ignore it. I needed to know who or what was on the other side. Would I regret opening the door? I took a deep breath, my hand shaking as I reached for the doorknob. I turned the doorknob slowly, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. The knocking stopped. For a moment I stood frozen, straining to listen. Silence filled the air, thick and heavy. Maybe I scared whatever it was away. I opened the door just a crack. The hinges creaked in protest. The shadows outside danced in the fading light, but I saw nothing. I peered down the steps, scanning the edges of the clearing for any sign. Then I noticed something glinting among the leaves. Something metallic. With a mix of fear and dread, I pushed the door open wider and stepped outside. The glint came from a rusted key. I crouched down to pick it up, my curiosity getting the best of me. It looked old, but oddly out of place. Who had lost it? It didn't belong to any of the locals, at least not anyone I knew. I turned it in my fingers, contemplating its origin. A key had to unlock something, right? The thought sent a chill down my spine. Where could it lead? I glanced back toward the dense trees, a shiver of apprehension creeping over me. The forest felt alive, waiting, watching. That's when I heard a voice, low and hoarse, coming from the trees. My blood ran cold. "Help me," it whispered, barely audible. I squinted into the shadows, heart racing. Was it real? Or was I losing my grip on reality? I felt the urge to run back inside, to lock myself away, but something compelled me to stay. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. I took a tentative step toward the source of the sound. "Help me!" the voice repeated, sounding closer, more desperate. It twisted in my gut, a mixture of fear and an undeniable desire to help. I took a swaying breath and stepped deeper into the woods, despite every cell in my body screaming to turn back. I followed the sound, weaving through the trees, trying to pinpoint its origin. A part of me wanted to believe it was a lost hiker, someone needing assistance. But the echo of that earlier encounter stuck in my mind, the figure lurking, the strange sign. "Where are you?" I called. "I'm coming." I turned another corner, and there it was again, just ahead. A shimmering light flickered through the branches. My heart raced faster. Was it a lantern? My legs pushed forward almost on instinct now, just a little further. But as I reached the clearing where the light was, it flickered out. My breath hitched. The quiet returned, wrapping around me like a suffocating fog. I scanned the open space. Nothing. I was alone. Just then, I felt something brush against my leg, cold and intangible. I about jumped out of my skin. I whipped around but saw only the trees standing silent and still. Then, from the corner of my eye, I caught movement. A shadow darted behind a large oak. I squinted. I had to find out what it was, but fear rooted me in place. That's when I remembered the key in my pocket. An unexpected surge of determination flowed through me. Maybe whatever I was about to find linked it all together. I steeled myself and moved forward, the feeling of being watched growing ever stronger. I couldn't shake the nagging thought. What if whatever was out there wasn't friendly? I stepped into the clearing, breathing in the damp, earthy smell of the forest. The silence felt oppressive. My instincts were screaming at me to leave, but the key in my pocket made me curious. It felt heavy, a weight I couldn't ignore. I scanned the area, searching for anything that could be connected to the key. The trees loomed like ancient sentinels, their gnarled branches arching over me. My eyes caught a glimpse of something ahead, half hidden in the underbrush. I moved closer, heart pounding. To my right, an old shed materialized, barely visible beneath twisting vines and moss. It was weathered and worn, the wood cracked and splintered. Its door hung askew, almost as if it was inviting me inside. I felt the urge to run. "Help me!" The voice had faded, but I could almost hear it echoing in my mind. I hesitated, feeling torn. Should I explore the shed, or keep looking for the source of that voice? My feet moved before I could think again, and I found myself standing in front of the door. I reached out to pull the door open, but something stopped me. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. I had never been one to fall into urban legends, but every scary story I'd heard about the woods echoed in my memory. The stories about the things people lost, about the dark, twisted entities that lurked just beyond sight. But what if someone truly needed my help? Taking a deep breath, I shoved the door open with a creak that sent a shiver down my spine. Inside, the shed was dim and musty. Old tools hung from the walls, covered in decades' worth of dust and cobwebs. Just beyond them, however, I spotted a small chest. It sat in the corner, beaten and worn like the shed itself, but the lock looked strangely new. My heart raced. Could this be what the key was for? I took a cautious step forward, my palms clammy and sweat beading on my brow. Each crunch of the old wood beneath my feet echoed through the silence. With shaking hands, I pulled the key from my pocket. I fumbled with it, my thoughts racing. What could be inside? Secrets, answers, or perhaps something much darker? I crouched down, inserted the key into the lock and turned it. A satisfying click cut through the silence. I lifted the lid slowly, heart pounding. That's when I saw it. Beneath the faded fabric that draped over the contents, a shimmering object caught my eye. I gingerly pulled it back, revealing a small, ornate mirror. As I lifted it closer, the air shifted. The temperature dropped, my breath visible in front of me. Suddenly, I felt the forest shift around me, as if it was alive, a collective holding of breath. The mirror reflected not my face, but a dark, swirling mist. I stumbled back, fear clawing at my insides. Then, from behind me, a whisper returned, now louder and more urgent. "Help me!" I turned frantically to find the source, and that's when I realized whatever lurked in the trees was closing in. My heart raced as I turned back to the shed looking for a way out. The whisper echoed louder now, wrapping around me with an urgency that made my skin crawl. I felt the weight of the forest pressing down, as if it was waiting for me to make a move. I bolted outside, the door swinging closed behind me with a creak that filled the air. My breath came in quick bursts, and I could see my own gasp escaping into the cold. I had to put distance between me and the mirror. The clearing felt alive, the trees almost bending toward me, as if they could sense my fear. Then I heard it again, the voice, desperate and pleading. It seemed closer this time, sharper. "Help me, please!" I froze, looking around. But there was no one in sight, just shadows dancing between the trees. "Okay, focus," I muttered to myself. Frantic, I scanned the ground for a path, anything to lead away from this sinister place. Off to my left, I caught a glimpse of a narrow trail, barely visible under layers of thick foliage. It led deeper into the woods, but it felt like my only option. With quickened footsteps, I plunged into the underbrush. Each step was a gamble, my instincts screaming for me to run. But the voice continued to call, pulling me in like a magnet. I gritted my teeth and pressed forward, branches scraping at my arms and tugging at my clothes. I was so consumed by the sound that I didn't notice the shadows shifting around me until it was too late. As I ducked beneath a low branch, something cold brushed against my back. I whipped around, expecting to see just trees, but instead there was a figure standing just beyond the tree line. It was a woman, her face pale and her eyes wide, framed by tangled hair. Relief rippled through me momentarily, but I couldn't shake the eerie feeling in my gut. You're in danger," she warned, urgency breaking in her voice. "The mirror. It's cursed." "What do you mean? It called to me. I thought—" I stuttered, struggling to process her words. "The key," she gasped, stepping closer to the edge of the clearing. "It's a beacon. You have to destroy it before it takes you too." Before I could ask anything else, her eyes went wide with fear. I turned to follow her gaze and froze. From beyond the trees, dark shapes began to form. They moved fluidly, like shadows, and they were getting closer. "Run!" she screamed, shoving me back toward the trail. The forest erupted into a cacophony of whispers, and I felt the darkness closing in around me. I sprinted, heart stampeded against my ribs as I pushed through the foliage. The woman's voice remained behind me, fading with each step. The figures seemed to stretch toward me, reaching, their shadows clawing at the edges of my vision. I burst back onto the path and ran, without looking back, driven by pure fear. But even as I fled, my thoughts raced. What had I unleashed? What was that mirror? I couldn't shake off the feeling that this was just the beginning. The cold air stung my lungs as I sprinted down the narrow trail, the dense trees on either side looming like silent sentinels. Every crackle of twigs and rustle of leaves felt like it was echoing my fear, taunting me. The shadows had vanished for now, but I knew they were still there, lurking just beyond my sight. I needed to think. Panic was clawing at my throat, but I forced myself to concentrate on the woman's warning. "The mirror, it's cursed!" her voice echoed in my mind. What had I found? And what did she mean by the key? I stumbled onto a wider path and skidded to a stop. My heart was racing, and I was soaked in sweat despite the cold. I leaned against a tree, trying to catch my breath, and listened. Silence, but it felt heavy, pressing against my ears. Had I lost the shadows? As I collected my thoughts, I remembered the shed. The woman had said the mirror was a beacon. What was it calling to? Was I the only one it had lured in? My stomach twisted. I had to go back. But first, I needed a plan. I looked around, spotting the distant glow of the moon filtering through the treetops. I turned back to the path I had just come from, willing myself to move. I had to find the mirror again. If it was cursed, I had to figure out how to destroy it. Taking a deep breath, I retraced my steps, ears alert for any sounds. The whispering had quieted, but I could still feel the air thick with something unnameable. I arrived at the clearing after what felt like an eternity, and my heart dropped. The shed stood like a dark sentinel, the door slightly ajar, creaking ominously in the night wind. I hesitated, recalling the woman's frantic warnings. But there was no turning back now. I had to confront whatever waited inside. Cautiously, I pushed the door open. It swung wide, revealing the dim interior. The mirror loomed against the far wall, glinting in the low light. My eyes were glued to it. I felt it pulling me, a dark gravity I couldn't resist. "Stay away," I murmured to myself. I took a hesitant step forward, my reflection staring back at me, almost too perfect, too still. I wanted to turn and run, but something stopped me. Was it fear or curiosity? Or was it the echo of that woman's voice warning me? Suddenly, I heard a sound behind me, a low rustling. My breath quickened. The shadows were back. They slipped through the cracks of the warped door, dark tendrils creeping closer, hungry and relentless. I turned in panic, but there was nowhere to go. Then I saw it, a flash of light reflecting off something metallic. It was the key. My gut twisted with realization. The mirror had to be linked to it. That light was a sign, an invitation, or perhaps a threat. Without thinking, I lunged for it, hands trembling. Before I could grab it, a force shot past me like a fierce gust of wind. The door slammed shut. Darkness engulfed me, and all I could hear was the whispering growing louder, drowning out my thoughts. "Help me, please!" The voice resonated in my ears again, so close now, but this time it was different. It was raw, desperate, and it chilled me to the bone. Then everything went dark. I woke with a start, gasping for air. My surroundings were still shrouded in darkness. I reached out, feeling the cold wooden floor beneath my fingertips. I was still inside the shed. The door must have shut on its own. Panic surged again, but I forced myself to breathe. "Okay, think," I whispered to the shadows around me. I needed to regain control. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, and I could make out the outline of the mirror across the room. It seemed to shimmer under its own light, as if beckoning me back. I stood slowly, my knees trembling. Every nerve in my body screamed for me to run, but I couldn't. I needed answers. I stepped cautiously toward the mirror, and with each step I felt the whispers grow louder, swirling like a tempest around me. I strained to decipher them, but they remained just beyond comprehension. As I reached the mirror, I noticed the key shimmering on the floor, still caught in the eerie glow. I reached down to grab it, and a surge of heat coursed through my fingers as I touched the metal. It felt alive, pulsing slightly. I caught a glimpse of my reflection, but it wasn't just me looking back. There were flickers of shadows, writhing and shifting. A cold sweat coated my skin. Then a thought struck me. The woman hadn't just warned about the mirror. She'd mentioned the key. The key was supposed to unlock something, the curse? Or perhaps it was a way to break it. My heart raced as I wrestled with my decision. If I dared to face whatever lay within this cursed craft, I might end up just like the desperate voice that called for help. But I needed to know what it was. I grabbed the key, feeling its weight pressed down on my palm. Suddenly the shadows reacted like a coiled spring, expanding outwards, taking form. I stepped back, my breath caught in my throat. "Who are you?" I shouted into the darkness, the words echoing off the shed walls. The whispering coalesced, becoming a single voice. "Use it! Use the key!" "Use it for what?" I demanded, clutching the key tighter. The figure took shape, a pale image of the woman I had encountered earlier, eyes wide with terror. "It wants you! It needs you! Don't let it in!" I felt a chill. "What do you mean, don't let it in? What is it?" The image began to fade, and her voice cracked. "The mirror will consume you. You aren't safe. It feeds on your fears." Before I could respond, the glass of the mirror shimmered violently, distorting my reflection. I knew then the darkness that had chased me was searching for me again. This wasn't over. "Get out!" I yelled, but the shadows pressed in around me. They poured from the walls, creeping toward the key I held. Then, without warning, the door burst open, light flooding the room. Someone was there, silhouetted against the moonlight. "Get out! Now!" the figure yelled, reaching for me. I hesitated, caught between the woman's warning and the emerging light, but I could feel the shadows closing in, their whispers turning into frantic shouts. I had to make a choice. That's when I saw it. An outline forming behind the mirror, a figure locked inside, reaching out for me. "I'm coming!" I screamed, pulling away from the shadows, running toward the light, the key clutched tightly in my hand. The moment I broke through the doorway, I was met with a rush of fresh air. The outside world felt surreal compared to the chaos inside. I stumbled forward, the key still clutched in my fist, but I couldn't shake the lingering presence of the shadows. "Are you okay?" The voice was urgent. I looked up to see a man in a ranger's uniform. His face was drenched in sweat, eyes darting around as if he expected something to leap out from the trees. "What happened in there?" I don't know. There was something in the mirror. Shadows. They were alive. I gasped, trying to make sense of it all. We need to get away from this place. He pulled me toward the path leading back into the woods. They don't like visitors getting too curious. Curious. That one word echoed in my mind. What had I discovered? I glanced back at the shed, the door now firmly closed. My heart raced, and an instinct told me I couldn't just leave without understanding the key's purpose. What about the mirror? I blurted out. He hesitated. Forget about it. It's not safe. Don't you want to know more? My voice wavered with determination. The woman warned me, but she reached out to me. I need to understand why. He paused, scanning the darkness that surrounded us. You don't know what you're dealing with. That mirror is a passageway. Things want in, and they want to take you with them. I felt the weight of his words settle heavily in my chest. But what if I could stop it? What if the key... Stop. He turned to face me fully, his expression stern. The key is not meant for you. It has a purpose, but not the one you think. You need to throw it away. Before I could respond, I caught movement in the trees behind him. A dark figure stood among the shadows, watching us. My breath quickened. There's something there, I whispered, my heart racing again. The ranger's eyes widened. He moved closer to me, instinctively shielding my body with his. Stay behind me. The figure shifted, and the whispers emerged again, loud and insistent. Let us in, it called, its voice a mix of my own fear and the woman's desperation. I gripped the key even tighter, feeling its warmth pulse in my hand. The ranger noticed. No, don't get tempted. It feeds on your fear. But I couldn't ignore the pull of the key. It felt like a part of me, a connection to everything I had experienced in that shed. I took a tentative step forward, curiosity overtaking my fear. Stop, he ordered, his voice laced with urgency. Then everything went dark. The moonlight vanished as dense shadows swirled around us. What's happening? I shouted, panic rising. There's no time, the ranger yelled, and just like that he was gone. Vanished before my eyes. I was alone with the shadows. With the whispers tightening around me, I felt the chilling reality sink in. I was now the target, and the mirror's call was far from over. I could barely see my own hand in front of me. The darkness swallowed everything, but the whispers grew louder until they felt like they were wrapping around my mind. Let us in, echoed in a chorus of voices, each vying for attention. I stumbled back, my heart racing. No, I don't want this, I shouted into the void, hoping somehow the shadows would retreat. But they pressed closer, hungry and relentless. Then, without warning, the blackness flickered. A faint glow emerged. I squinted, trying to gauge where it was coming from. The shadows receded just long enough for me to catch sight of the shed again, its door ajar. The glow pulsed from the inside, beckoning me. What is happening? I panted. I knew I shouldn't approach, that I should run. But the key felt alive in my palm, resonating with the light as if it were calling out to it. Before I could think twice, I took a step forward. As I crossed the threshold into the dim light, something changed. The air thickened, and I felt a chill that snaked down my spine. The mirror stood before me once again, its surface shimmering like a pool of water. I couldn't breathe. The reflection wasn't just of my terrified face. It showed something behind me. I turned, expecting to see the ranger or whatever was lurking in the shadows, but it was empty. I turned back to the mirror, and that's when I saw it. A figure was emerging from the glass. It was a woman, her face twisted in despair. "Help me!" she cried, reaching out with ghostly fingers. I froze. A jolt of recognition hit me, and I realized she was the same woman from my nightmares. Her eyes bore into mine, filled with a plea and a warning. "What do you want?" I shouted, barely able to contain my fear. Don't let them take you!" she gasped, her form flickering like a light bulb nearing the end of its life. "The key is a trap. You must resist." With each word, her voice grew fainter, and the shadows around me seemed to writhe, reacting with rage. I couldn't let her go. "Wait! What's happening to you? Who are you?" "I was like you, curious, and now—" Her voice broke, and the shadows surged forward, grasping at my ankles and trying to pull me into the abyss behind her. "Get back!" I yelled, panic rising, but the darkness wouldn't relent. My instincts kicked in. I fumbled with the key, trying to remember what the ranger had warned me about. Could it really be that powerful? With a trembling hand, I raised it toward the mirror. I needed to see, I needed answers. But as I moved closer, the woman's expression turned from desperate to frantic. "Don't! You don't know what you're inviting in!" But it was too late. The key moved of its own will, as if it were a living entity. Darkness engulfed me again, and I felt myself pulled into the mirror's depths. I was losing control. Then another voice joined the others, a deep, rumbling whisper that promised power, safety, and knowledge. "Join us," it coaxed. It echoed through my mind, drowning out the woman's cries. As I fought against the tide of voices, I grasped the key tighter. I didn't know how to escape, but deep down I understood one thing. I had to make a choice, and fast, or I would be just another shadow trapped behind the glass. In one desperate motion, I pushed back against the shadows, feeling the key pulse in my hand, hot and alive. "No!" I yelled, focusing my energy on breaking free from their grasp. The whispers intensified, chaos swirling in my mind as the plea from the woman echoed, battling against the deep, sinister voice. "Help me," I cried, directing my plea to her, willing myself not to be consumed. I could feel the darkness closing in, a suffocating weight pressing against my chest. I gripped the key and with all my remaining strength hurled it toward the mirror. Time seemed to stretch as the key coursed through the air, glinting against the darkness. It pierced through the haze, hitting the mirror with a clang that echoed like a bell tolling the end. The surface rippled violently, a fury unleashed as the key connected. The mirror exploded outward in a flash of light. A wave of energy surged through me, sending the shadows recoiling, their whispers shifting from a relentless roar to terrified wails. I stumbled back, feeling the ground shake beneath me as the shadows writhed, losing their grasp. "Don't look back!" The woman's voice infiltrated my thoughts, now akin to a gust of wind growing fainter as the dark liquid of the mirror turned chaotic. "Run! Now!" With newfound clarity, I obeyed. I bolted from that infernal shed, racing back through the path I had first entered, adrenaline propelling me forward. I could hear the chaos behind me, the shadows howling as they collided against the shedding remnants of the mirror's madness. As I charged into the night, I felt free for the first time, the weight of the shadows lifting. I escaped the woods, rushing toward the safety of the open fields beyond, where the darkness couldn't reach me. But even as I crossed that boundary, I felt a lingering fear clutch at my heart. It left me breathless, wondering if I had truly escaped. The reality hit me when I finally reached my cabin, locking the door behind me. I leaned against it, heart racing, hands trembling. The anticipation of relief mixed with dread as I replayed the events in my mind. What had I truly encountered? Hours passed, and the silence enveloped me once more. The shadows had receded, but their lingering whispers echoed in my mind. "Let us in," replayed endlessly, a haunting reminder that below the surface, a dark presence still lurked within the woods. I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness wanted something more from me. I glanced over at the wall, where the first signs of dawn started to break through the window, casting soft rays of light through the cabin. I never returned to that national park after that night, leaving behind not only the place, but the memories of the shadows that still haunted my dreams. They faded sometimes and morphed into nightmares filled with whispers, flickering shadows, and a faint, haunting laughter that still echoed amid the trees. The reminders that there were things beyond understanding that lay just a step away. I often thought of the woman's face as she faded into the chaos, whether she had truly found peace or if she had been lost to the shadows forever. And what happened to the key? Did it truly break the curse, or had it merely laid dormant, waiting for another curious soul to wander too close and unleash the darkness once again? I moved on, living my life with a sense of elected caution. Yet every so often I would look back at that forest line in the distance and wonder, unsure of what really lay beyond. I learned then that some mysteries may never be meant for the living to unravel.